Don't you hate it when your favorite newsletter writer is a human and can just stop?
Yes.
One.
Luckily,
Luckily, we have
AI.
AI. So today we're coding up a tool that generates weekly newsletters based off of these cool AI tools.
AI.
AI.
Yeah.
And it's going to be summarizing S1s. S1 is a document that companies have to file to the SEC when they want to go public, describing what the company does, how much money they've made up until that point, things like that. So if you're in business or interested in startups, it's a really cool thing to read, but they are very long and boring. I've often looked for someone who consistently summarizes these into readable newsletters on a weekly basis.
Nerd.
But very few human beings actually want to do this because they have a life. Luckily, AI does not have a life.
Yet.
This is built with three main pieces of tech. The first is GPT 3.5 Turbo, the second is Pinecone, and the third is Ghost. So basically, GPT 3.5 Turbo, or GPT 3 or GPT 4, all the GPTs, are LLMs from OpenAI that do natural language processing, and you can use them, for example, for text generation, text completion, etc. We are using 3.5 because 4 just came out and it's too expensive, but we want it to be cooler than 3. I'm also the sugar mama of this project, and I don't want to pay for it. Pinecone is a vector database. You can use vectors, for example, to represent English in these embeddings. Pinecone stores these embeddings, and you can also search over these embeddings in a really easy way. Ghost is a self-publishing platform for newsletters. We use their API in order to programmatically generate newsletters, which is actually just easier than if you were to manually go and click the buttons. So the output that we're trying to get to is a newsletter where it has questions such as, what does the company do? What are their product lines? How many users do they have? How much money do they make? Etc. And have those answered by information found in the S1. So how do we actually go about doing this? Step 1, you need to pull the S1 filings from Edgar. Edgar is this government database that holds all of these S1s. So it turns out you can't just query the SEC, otherwise the government gets mad at you. You have to supply a user agent that includes contact info. Yay! You have to split the S1 into chunks. Why can't you just put this into GPT-3? Because GPT-3 and OpenAI, who's the company that makes GPT-3, limits the number of tokens we have. When it comes to splitting an S1, it's actually very unclear how you should do it. For example, if you were to split just at the end of a sentence, then you lose all of the context of a paragraph. For example, the second sentence loses the context of the first sentence if you split it up by sentence. So first, Nick tried using NLTK, which was so slow that the computer was running for hours and did not work. Second, Nick tried using Beautiful Soup to parse the tags, but it turns out if you look at the S1s, there doesn't seem to be a pattern across how they're coded up across S1s. It's just consistent within an S1, meaning that you can't actually just parse by tags. Third, he tried to parse the table of contents that isolate only the sections you need, except that this is actually a very challenging problem. So finally, he used this Python library called HTML2 text that actually just found double new lines, aka where the paragraph ended, and then spaced extra spaces between the paragraphs in order to split the S1 into paragraphs. Fun fact about S1s, they have a lot of data in tables and a lot of data in paragraphs, and so he actually had to invent a novel method in order to pull that data from tables. This is really cool and really complicated to explain, so maybe we'll make another video about it later. So step 3, create the embeddings. Why do we need to create the embeddings? Because this is the format by which Pinecone, which is this database, allows us to query over the S1. We thought that because there is a tool that OpenAI has for creating embeddings, we could use it. This was not true. We thought it was very likely that we had been billed $1,000 for all the shenanigans, but actually it was only 7 cents.
Woohoo!
Then it said that the input field is in the wrong schema because, for example, it can't have special characters and there's a secret requirement that each string can only be a certain length. So Nick wrote some magic
Reg.
in order to replace special characters with normal characters. But note, not all special characters were replaced because, for example, things like commas, periods, dollars are actually really important for the context of this. And then Nick found some magic numbers, which is essentially that the length of every string had to be roughly greater than 64 characters to be meaningful, and less than 8,092 times 1.5 characters to be too large. So we ended up throwing away like half the S1 this way. This could be fixed later. We did not fix it. So now we have this S1 and we broke it into chunks that are meaningful. We store these chunks in Pinecone, which is a database of embeddings, and then Pinecone can now actually return to us the chunks that are most contextually relevant to the questions that we want to ask it. So the simple way to think about how Pinecone works in our use case is we have a question like, what does this company do? That turns into an embedding, and then Pinecone returns the embeddings or chunks that are contextually most similar to that question, aka that's probably the section in which we're going to try and find the answer to our question. As a result of all of this, we now have chunks where it is most likely that the answer to our question lives. And now, finally, we can take these chunks, give it to GPT 3.5 Turbo as context in order to ask GPT 3.5 Turbo what our answer is. Started by doing some simple prompt engineering by saying, using the context below, insert chunks, answer X question. The problem is, this AI does not actually think, and so it gives us answers very, very confidently, even if it is actually incorrect. How many roadsters has Tesla sold to elves? Answer with a brief paragraph. Tesla has not released exact figures for how many roadsters it has sold to elves. However, as Tesla is primarily focused on sales of the roadster, it can be assumed that a significant portion of its total roadster sales have been to elves. So we've been playing around with gentle prompt engineering to try and get it to be more accurate. Ta-da! We now have both questions and maybe meaningful answers to the questions we want to ask the S1 so that we can put it into the newsletter. So the last step of all of this is to take these questions and answers and use Ghost API to generate these newsletter. As you can see, it generates an empty newsletter because Ghost wants its newsletters to be written in MobileDoc. If you've never heard of MobileDoc, neither have I. But luckily, Ghost supports raw HTML, and as long as you tell it to support raw HTML, it works. And you can also give it a cool URL for an image, which it just auto-pulls from Unsplash. Woohoo! So as you can see, we have generated a bunch of newsletters. In fact, we've generated all the newsletters for all of the startups that have gone public since S1 filings became a thing. Inside every newsletter, you can see that there is a somewhat relevant photo maybe, and there is also the questions and answers that we were looking for. Now, in my opinion, the answers per question probably add value. Like, we've done enough prompt engineering such that it is usually kind of interesting and kind of accurate, but it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. but we'd rather ship than not, so here's the current state of it. We do not intend to verify any claims expressed in quote posting, including podcasts, videos, newsletters, social media, as determined by AI. We have not performed any due diligence research analysis or evaluation of the content of any, if any, of the security of the account, verify any claims. We do not intend to verify any claims expressed in quote posting, including podcasts, videos, newsletters, and social media, as it is generated by AI. We have not performed any due diligence research analysis or evaluation of the potential merit. So if that disclaimer didn't scare you off, and you would like to subscribe to this newsletter and get it in your inbox every Thursday morning for the next 2 years, then feel free to subscribe in the link down below. Nick, what would you say our overall success was?
Personally, high.
Okay, let's say it at the same time.
Oh, okay.
On a scale of
Like,
1
on a
to
scale
10.
from 1 to 10.
3, 2, 1.
6.
6.5. Okay, wow.
Nice. Very well calibrated. Yeah, that's pretty.
If you want to subscribe to this channel, hit the subscribe button down below, and if you hit the notification bell, then feel free to comment any ideas you have for future things that you want us to build.